It's time for Clemson Sports Talk with Lawton Swan.
Ready, set!
Just call me Swanny.
Tiger style. Tiger style.
Finally, Clemson Sports Talk has come back to Drive Time. Hello, everybody. Lawton Swan back in the saddle once again. It is the show that shakes the Southland, Clemson Sports Talk for you each and every afternoon as you make your way around the great state of South Carolina and beyond, listening to us on incredible radio stations like Fox Sports Radio 1400 the Midlands, heard around the world on the iHeartRadio app, live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter as well. Technically, I guess, in some respects right now, we've been replaying it over there. Nonetheless, the Clemson Tiger recruiting class of 2022 comes to a conclusion yesterday. We'll have more updates on that front. Again, on the show, we heard from Dabo Swanny and Graham Neff, the athletic director at Clemson. I know some of that interview was cut off. I think maybe the final 3 or 4 minutes. What we'll do, since we had several people reach out to us about it, we will re-rack that final 4 or 5 minutes of that conversation with Graham Neff. Also on the program today, how about the Clemson men's basketball team? 75-69 last night. Clemson knocks off Florida State. The Seminoles entered the game at 6-4 in the ACC, 13-8 overall. Clemson entered at 3-6. They come out 4-6, 12-9 overall, in a big victory. Boy, I'll tell you what, the play of PJ Hall, one of the best players right now, maybe in the Atlantic Coast Conference, with just sort of the confidence that he's been playing with. 15 points on 5 of 8 shooting from the field, 20th consecutive game, scoring in double figures. I mean, he was just not only an offensive weapon for Clemson, but he was he really spearheaded that entire performance for the Clemson Tigers. The Tigers bench outscored the Florida State Seminoles 32-22 as Clemson comes away with the 75-69 victory. And no doubt about it, that's the exact type of win that this Clemson club needed for sure. And, look, I have been up and down on Brad Brownell. Nobody has ever tried to deny that fact from my seat. I wish this program was more consistent than it has been. But the performance that you got last night against Florida State was a solid performance. And yes, Clemson had their stretch where they allowed the Seminoles to climb back into it. But ultimately, Clemson closed it out, winning 75-69. In addition to PJ Hall's 15 points, Chase Hunter gave you 12 points in the contest. David Collins also scored 9. Collins had 8 rebounds in the game. But the bad news coming off of this is the fact that Hunter Tyson suffered a broken collarbone. It was confirmed that during that game he suffered a broken collarbone, and there is no timetable for his return. The downside of that, outside of losing his versatility, there is no question that, this Clemson Tiger basketball team cannot afford very many setbacks, if any at all. And he is one of those guys that I think is I'll be honest, I think he's underperformed in his career at Clemson so far. I thought he would be a much more refined player at this point than maybe he is. He has his moments, don't get me wrong, not to be dismissive of the moments of success that he does have, but I really thought he would be a more consistent performer for the Tigers than what his numbers bear out. At this point, he averages just over 10 points per game and just over 5.5 rebounds per contest. I really thought by his senior year, this kid would be, upwards of 13, 14 points a night. I don't know that the rebounds I necessarily thought would be bigger, but I thought he would be a more prolific scorer during his time at Clemson. But minus his versatility at 6'8", 215 pounds, I mean, that's a big hit for this Clemson Tiger men's basketball team. And they are entering a tough stretch of ball games. On Saturday, they'll take on Georgia Tech on the road before hosting back-to-back North Carolina on Tuesday, the 8th of February at 6 o'clock. And then Duke that Thursday, just 2 days later, they'll host the Blue Devils at 8 o'clock at Little John Coliseum before hosting Notre Dame at home. So, again, a little 4-game stretch with a road trip to Georgia Tech before a trifecta at home against North Carolina, Duke, and then Notre Dame. But the Clemson Tigers, nonetheless, last night did get it done over the Florida State Seminoles and a 75-69 victory at this point in the year, kind of given the fact that they had such a heartbreaking loss at Cameron Indoor Stadium back in late January, a week ago. I think that was key that they came back and found a way to win this game, because that was a absolutely heartbreaking loss against the Duke Blue Devils. And I have seen many teams that take that L, that lose that game, and then, let it beat them twice. And Clemson did not let that game beat them twice. And again, I can't say enough about the energy that you are seeing from PJ Hall, just from everything that he's doing to lead this team, including when he gets a block, firing up the crowd. It is not an intimidating environment playing in Little John Coliseum like it has been in the past. I think there's a malaise to a degree over the fan base about Brad Brownell in this program. I think yesterday one of the reporters who was asking the questions to Graham Neff about him, I think he called Brad Brownell like a lightning rod, bad or good, one way or the other. And maybe so, but to me, there's just a disconnect at this point that Clemson Tiger fans have had, because there is a lack of success under Brad Brownell. And I don't think this is necessarily unique to the basketball program. I think that it can happen in other sports. The problem is that in other sports at Clemson, specifically football and baseball, that kind of malaise wouldn't be allowed to infest the fan base before changes were already made. But the Tigers survived. Nick Honor gave you 12 points. Chase Hunter gave you 12 points. Naz Bohannon had 11 points in the ball game. 4 guys in double figures, but it was PJ Hall's 15 points and 7 boards that led the way for the Clemson Tigers in their 75-69 victory over the Florida State Seminoles. At one point, Clemson led the game by 12 points, 55-43, and ultimately held on to bring home a conference win and some confidence before a tough stretch of games outside of maybe, and look, anytime they go to Atlanta, I can't lie to you, that never is an easy game for Clemson. But the back-to-back home games looming against Duke, North Carolina, and Notre Dame do put a little bit of concern in the mind's eye ahead of those matchups. 803-450-0086. So yesterday afternoon, and we will hear from Brad Brownell and PJ Hall and Naz Bohannon coming up in just a little bit, some of their post-game comments on this Florida State game. But Clemson did wrap up the signing period of 2022 and turn their attention to the We Too Deep class of 2023 after yesterday's run of success. 2 4-star players coming into the fold, TJ Dudley, linebacker, and also defensive lineman Caden Story, who both prospects certainly down the road will help this Clemson Tiger team, given the fact that, there is, or dare I say, there was some concern about the small recruiting class that Clemson put together back in December. But when you close the deal and you land a couple of big fish late, it's a positive momentum heading into the offseason. And so I think that, for Clemson to, pick up those two guys certainly carried most of the weight yesterday. Dabo Swanny, I think in some respects, knows that there are some positions on this team, including defensive line, where, yes, you want to recruit top-tier talent, but you don't necessarily need guys that are going to play tomorrow. And so you can bring in a guy that maybe is not going to command or demand to be playing immediately and allow that player to grow. One of the interesting things that's come out of the situation with Texas A&M, who had the number one recruiting class in the country, there are a lot of people that believe that if Texas A&M, and again, we played the audio yesterday from Jimbo Fisher, if Texas A&M is indeed sort of putting on this NIL front, so to speak, as a way to be successful, if you come there, you'll get some money. I mean, if that's kind of how this all played out, even though they don't want to acknowledge that might be what's happened, one of the things that it got me thinking about, quite frankly, is the fact that, okay, well, and I saw some people tweeting about this too, which, I don't know if, quote, great minds think alike, but that's what I've always heard. But I saw some people talking about the fact that, hey, look, if these guys at Texas A&M all arrive on campus as top flight players, from across the country, most of them are probably going to want to play. And if what led them to arrive in College Station was the belief that they were indeed going to have the ability to cash in NIL deals, well, that's all well and good unless it doesn't stick around for a second year. It's all well and good unless you don't get a chance to play. It's all well and good, on and on and on down the list until it's not. And could you see a number of prospects out of College Station deciding next year that, hey, you know what? I think I might go play somewhere else. Thanks for the money. There is no period of sitting out. So if Texas A&M is indeed dangling NIL deals, whether Jimbo Fisher wants to admit it or not, in front of prospects, then they can go cash that check, go stay at Texas A&M for a year, not lose anything, and leave the following season. And A&M signed the number one wide receiver in Texas, the number one defensive lineman out of Florida, the number one cornerback in the state of Texas, the number one defensive lineman in the state of Tennessee, the number one defensive lineman in the state of Arizona, the number one safety in Louisiana, the number one defensive end out of Pennsylvania, the number one safety out of Georgia, the number one tight end out of Texas, the number one tight end out of Georgia, the number one running back out of Louisiana. And so there is no doubt a ton of talent coming in there, and we're talking about 5 stars galore, 4 stars. I mean, you're talking about some top tier guys. But are they going to be willing to stick it out if they have to sit and wait a couple of seasons or a season to play? And maybe some of these guys will come in and immediately be able to play this year. But could there be an influx of guys out of the state of College Station, out of Texas A&M, that ultimately decide that, hey, you know what? Yeah, it was great to show up. It was great to get an NIL. And now it's going to be great to go find some place to play. As I've said, I mean, when you look at the record, when you look at what Jimbo Fisher's success has been at A&M, the best thing he's accomplished, without question, is what? Beating Alabama. I mean, that's it, right? Is there anything greater than that he's accomplished during his time at A&M? Finishing on the outside of the top 4, like 5th a year ago. I mean, is that it? Maybe so. And if indeed that is what you think, then I'm not sure. And look, I openly admit you have to be able to recruit great. You have to be able to bring in great players in order to be as successful as teams and fans want to be, right? You have to go get big fish. But can you turn that into success in the SEC West in the midst of Alabama? And that's the thing that A&M fans have to understand. You can come at me all day long with, man, we're in the SEC. It's the best football in America. And I will come back with you, well, can you get in the college football playoff? Are you capable of winning a national title? Clemson has proven that they are more than capable of getting into the playoff out of the ACC and winning the national championship. Yeah, but they don't play in the SEC, Swanny. And let me tell you, if you are in some kind of like beauty pageant deal and you are in the pageant with the most, the most beautiful faces in the world, but you can't win Miss Universe or Miss America pageant or whatever, what does it really matter? Who you are standing among, shoulder to shoulder with in your conference. If you can't beat them and get to the college football playoff or win the national championship, what are you pounding your chest about? We're an average team in a great league. Yeah, look at us. That means we're really great if we were playing somewhere else. Does it? I mean, you can assume it, but it doesn't make it so. And how many of those gold scepters are sitting up in the coffers there at College Station? Zip zero. None. So again, I don't claim to know for certain that there is any nefarious dealings going on with the Aggies. But as I said yesterday, it would not surprise me if Jimbo Fisher was turning his, I'm not saying Jimbo Fisher's in charge of it. I'm not saying that Jimbo Fisher's leading the charge. But believe me, I would say that if Jimbo Fisher heard about it, he would probably stick his fingers in his ears and just go, nah. I don't want to know about it. I don't want to know how it works. Just get the players here, and we'll go out and try to win ball games. Can they? Will they? Who knows? I guess we'll see. The fact of the matter is, when everyone looks at the Aggies roster this year, it is going to be littered with talented players. But are they good enough to win the SEC West and even play in an SEC championship game? I don't think anybody knows. And I think if you gave somebody $100 and you said, look, here's $100. You put your money on whoever you want to that you believe is going to win the SEC West. And the only thing getting anybody to put money on A&M would be the odds. Would be the fact that they probably have odds that would bolster your winnings if they did win. But if it was just even money, you either get to keep this 100 or you don't. Put it on whoever you believe is going to win the SEC West. There's not going to be a lot of people sticking the money in Texas A&M's pocket. They're going to stick it in Alabama's pocket and give the Crimson Tide another shot at winning the SEC West. That's just the nature of the beast. 803-450-0086. When we get back, we'll hear from Brad Brownell after Clemson's 75-69 win over Florida State last night at Littlejohn Coliseum. Clemson Sports Talk on a Thursday afternoon, a warm Thursday. I know a lot of the country is getting some really, really rough weather, but not here, not where we are. I mean, it is nice. The kind of weather I like, being a Southern guy, being a guy that grew up in the big city of Barnwell, South Carolina. 803-450-0086, text line, phone line. Thank you all for being a part of the program. Again, Clemson last night knocking off the Florida State Seminoles at Littlejohn Coliseum. Brad Brownell, after the game, spoke with members of the media about what I really do feel like it was a clutch win to bounce back from their 2-point loss on the road at a top 10 Duke team about a week or so ago. But nonetheless, here's what Brownell had to say about Clemson's victory against the Seminoles.
Yeah, just hard-fought ACC basketball. Really pleased with the way we defended late. Didn't think we guarded as well in the first half, but offensively we were outstanding. Thought our bench gave us a huge lift. Obviously Nick and Naz and Alex and all those guys came off the bench and played very well offensively, which gave us a big boost. Not easy adjusting without Hunter, him getting injured in the game. And then, you got a couple of guys playing a couple different positions. They really don't practice that much. So I thought our guys adjusted well. We had to deal with some foul trouble issues in the first half, and guys hung in there and fought. So just a great team win. Really proud of our team, and I thought we showed very good toughness and competitive fight, especially defensively in the second half late.
Brad Brownell was also asked about just having to get through P.J. Hall picking up a second foul that puts him on the bench, and that's something he's done several times in his career and just has to mature out of.
PJ's got to learn that he can't make that second foul. Like there are some things that he does as a young player right now that, he's got to really mature if he wants to be an elite player in this league. We talked to him about it. He's what you see with him is, a happy-go-lucky kid who, obviously the only kid I've ever coached that's, encouraging the crowd at the free throw line, which we probably need to have a conversation about. Let's wait till we make the free throws and then do it. But that's who he is. That's who he is every day. He's a fun kid to coach. And I think, he felt bad because of the Duke game a little bit that, he had a lot of opportunities to make plays for us and didn't quite get it done. And today was really good. He made big free throws. Those are big shots, and big kids stepping up, making those in crucial time. That's high level play. So, proud of him. We need him out there more. So he's got to make some better decisions, especially defensively.
Brad Brownell was also asked about P.J. Hall's confidence and the energy that he brings, including the fact that, he pumped up the crowd and all that while he's shooting a free throw. Brad Brownell was just kind of asked about that energy that he brings to the table.
Yeah, absolutely. He's confident guy. Like he wants the shots. He wants big plays. He's not going to shy away from it at all. And that's what I love about him. And just like anything, you're going to have ebbs and flows. You're going to grow with it. There's going to be good times, and there's going to be times he doesn't quite get it done. But it's a learning experience. I think sometimes it's hard. We're a team that our best player is a sophomore. We've had Amir Sims last year. We go to the NCAA tournament, and Amir's our leader and, all conference player, not because of just his 13 points, but his defense was elite and his communication, all those little things. And now you're adjusting, and your best player is a sophomore, and, you count on him for a lot. And, he's going to have good days and bad days. He's going to be successful. He's going to be struggle. And, you saw a little bit of both in the halves of the game today.
Brad Brownell was also asked about whether or not he'd ever been around kind of a young player like P.J. Hall who led by the force of his personality, so to speak.
Yeah, I don't know that PJ's a leader yet. I think he's growing into one. I think, Hunter Tyson's our leader. It's unquestionable. And Naz is growing into that, like in terms of, he's got a big voice and he's a mature guy. You interview him, he's very mature and he's bright. So he's been through the wars. Those two guys are the voices in our locker room the most. PJ tries, but he's got a lot on his plate. So he just needs to focus on being a really good player. And as he gets comfortable with that and he kind of learns, because he's still he makes some mistakes that you hope he doesn't make, but it's part of the process. He's got a lot on his plate, a lot of ball screen coverages he's calling. We throw him the ball, and he's got to make good decisions, and there's just a lot. And so he's got a lot to just be really good. But he leads by his animated personality, fun-loving, good guy to be around. I think that's where our guys feed off of that from him.
Brad Brownell was also asked about Clemson's matchup zone that they played. You don't see a lot of it, and it was just sort of one of those things where, based on what he said, it sounds like they were trying to protect those guys a little bit, given the foul situation.
A little bit of both. Like we don't play it very often, and it was moderately effective today. It wasn't great. It was okay. It bought us a little time because of just some fouls and then just a little bit of fatigue. I thought we had some guys that were a little tired, and I knew it was going to be a long stretch to get to the end. And so we played, half a dozen possessions.
Brownell was also asked about the spark that Nick Honor and Naz Bohannon gave the team during their 6-point victory over Florida State last night.
Yeah, they were huge. Nick's had some games where he's played well, but hasn't shot it as well. Had a couple of weeks there, he wasn't shooting it as well, and he comes in at Duke, and he played great against Duke. He was outstanding when you look at the film, and his speed in the open court, made some shots. He did some nice things, and I thought he built on it tonight. He's trying to guard harder. He's doing some defensive things. Had a couple tough calls tonight, but I thought his energy was good. His speed is good. And then his shot making is huge. We need that out of him. We need him to be a confident shooter. And when he does, it opens things up. And then Naz, I thought, just played like an experienced guy. Took what was there. They're very disruptive, and so there's things that they're taking away, and you got to make some reads. And he makes pretty good reads. He can move the ball and get the ball into places, and it's not always with the dribble. Sometimes with the dribble, sometimes with the pass. But he's got a little spark of energy to your team.
Again, Brad Brownell talking about this Clemson Tiger men's basketball team. They go on the road this weekend to take on the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, but off of the heels of a victory over the Florida State Seminoles 75-69 last night at Littlejohn Coliseum. Stay with us. We'll hear from PJ Hall and Naz Bohannon on the show that shakes the Southland. Rolling along with you, the show that shakes the Southland on Twitter at Clemson Sports, and there is no doubt that it is frustrating for Brad Brownell and this Clemson Tiger men's basketball team. The news we talked with you about earlier with Hunter Tyson going down with a broken collarbone, no timetable yet, and you heard Brownell in the last segment say, look, he's unquestionably our leader. Emotionally, however, maybe PJ Hall is that guy for the Clemson Tigers, and he and Naz Bohannon had a chance to sit down with the media following Clemson's 6-point victory over the Florida State Seminoles. Remember, Bohannon, upperclassman that transferred into the program, brings a lot of stability, brings a lot of intangibles that upperclassmen tend to have. And PJ Hall sort of, in some ways, sometimes looks like a baby deer, right? Just excited to be alive, just excited to be out there on the court, and brings a ton of energy to the arena. So here are these two guys, or here are PJ Hall and Naz Bohannon speaking after Clemson's victory over Florida State. PJ Hall was asked about just how it felt to get the win, but maybe even more importantly to get it done with Hunter Tyson going down.
It felt great. A lot of energy from the fans. Everybody, it was collective effort. We had both of our freshmen come in, give us some good minutes. Ian was great. Naz came in, played a lot of minutes for Hunter, and was a whole collective effort. Everybody, it was awesome.
Hall was also asked about the inspiration to pump up the crowd while shooting free throws during the contest.
I don't know. It just kind of happens. I didn't do it much last year, obviously, when first I went in the game. But, I was really animated in high school, a lot of emotion. And honestly, it helps me because, whenever I start getting the crowd into it, I'm not tired. I don't feel any pain I've been going through or anything like that. It's adrenaline pump and it gets me up and down the floor. So our fans were very loud. There was one point where on defense, I'm trying to call ball screen coverage, and I can't even hear myself. And so I was like, all right. Dim it down. But no, it was good. It was awesome.
Naz Bohannon was asked about his opportunity to step up once Hunter Tyson got hurt.
Yeah, definitely. Hunt's one of our main guys, and I took pride in my role in coming to spot Hunt minutes this year or just doing whatever we were supposed to do. So when he went down, and I just was like, it's on me now. So, yeah,
PJ Hall was asked about playing through some pain, et cetera, during these games.
Not really. No, I don't really feel it in games. Whenever I cool down, I do. But you know, I got a lot of adrenaline going through my body, and I'm pretty warmed up on the course. I don't feel it too much in a game unless I have a bad step here or there. I remember there's one against Boston College when they took a charge on me, and I planted to go to the middle on a drive. And I pushed off. I felt it. There's one against Virginia where someone stepped on my foot. It's like very singular plays that kind of like hurt and stuff like that. But then it'll normally calm down.
Hall was also asked to address just the ability to rest up and have a week off to get better for this entire team.
It was very good for everybody. I mean, we got a lot of guys, you know, banged up. Hunter tonight, obviously, we don't know what happened yet, but I mean, before this, he had 2 purple ankles. So I mean, we've been going through some stuff, and so that was definitely a very good thing to have some time off.
As I mentioned earlier, Little John Coliseum, not nearly what it once was, in my estimation, in terms of just an intimidating environment, because the product on the court hasn't been as great as it once was. But you heard PJ Hall earlier talking about how difficult it was for even him to make some calls on the court. He was asked about the influence and the impact that the fans had on the game, especially in the latter stages.
Oh, yeah, it was awesome. I mean, that's what really gives us some adrenaline, gives us some extra energy, gets us up and down the floor. And then, I mean, it creates plays on defense. It makes it harder for them, makes it a lot easier for us. I mean, it's a home court advantage.
Hall was also asked about the fact that he had to sit like the last 9 or 10 minutes of the first half because of that second foul, and what it meant to have his team just continue to play well while he was on the bench watching.
It was huge. And honestly, it shows what we can do later in the season too. I mean, we had guys come off the bench, both of our freshmen filling for me whenever I was lacking on the court. So, I mean, they came out there, they really picked it up for me. And then all the other guys played really well too. Make it a shot at the end. Boys went up there, pulled up. A little 2-pointer was nice. So we went to the locker room with a lot of confidence.
Hall was also asked about Clemson's ability to hold a lead in the contest against Florida State, who made several runs.
Yeah, for sure. The last, I'd say, 3 games, we've really, including this one, we've really turned it up a notch, starting with Pitt. All those, we've really turned up our defense and took pride in it now. And so we went to Syracuse, we give up 90-some-odd points. We realized, like, hey, we gotta figure something out. And so it was not easy, but, I mean, we worked hard on it. So that's definitely something we're taking pride in now.
PJ Hall was also asked about how he feels like he's improved as a player from last year till now.
I definitely said the mental part of the game. Obviously, I polished up a lot of stuff in the offseason, worked on conditioning, cut some body fat, got bigger and stronger. But when it comes to playing extended minutes, that's why Amir was so good at everything he did, because he knew, like, in practice, he was 3 steps ahead of me always. And so it was definitely huge for me to learn from that and learn how to grow my mental side of the game. I mean, our saying is always mental is to physical is 4:1. So I'd say I'm probably at a 3 right now, trying to grow it a little bit more. But it's definitely been a huge growing point for me.
As for Naz Bohannon, he was also asked about having to step up with Hunter Tyson out, but maybe even more importantly, now with Tyson out for an extended period, what that transition could be like as well.
Just being confident and working at it every day. Going back with Hunt. Hunt's real open and he's honest, and we have a great relationship off the court. So him giving me pointers on what to do at what times in the games, and obviously playing extended minutes again. I've done it a lot and previously where I was at, but now I'm conditioning myself again to be able to play in longer portions if I need to.
So that's Naz Bohannon and PJ Hall again, giving you a little recap and look at Clemson's 75-69 victory over Florida State last night. The Tigers again moved to 12-9 on the season, 4-6 in the ACC. Coming up in hour number 2, we hope to be joined by legendary Clemson SID Tim Beret. Can't wait to catch up with him. We'll talk a little Clemson Tiger basketball. We'll talk a little Clemson football as the recruiting class was inked, and a little funny tidbit as well coming up for you here in a few minutes. I noticed something. I'm not the most what's the word I'm looking for? Observant. There we go. I'm not the most observant, but I did notice something that I don't know that anybody else noticed until I noticed it. All right. You got that? I am not the most observant, but I did notice something that I don't think anybody else noticed until I noticed it. And I brought it to the attention of the people, to the attention of the masses. It's over on Twitter at Clemson Sports. And we got a couple of classic replies. One from the gentleman involved. I'll tell you about it. Your Clemson defensive coordinator. and also the current Clemson football sports information director, Ross Taylor. I'll give you the rundown of what that was when we get back here on the show that shakes the Southland on a Thursday afternoon. Final segment of hour number one. Just got a text message from Tim Bray. He's actually got a meeting today, so we will roll without Tim in hour number two. You know what we can do? I mentioned that we would play a little bit of that interview with Graham Neff. That'll be a great time to fill some of that in. As a matter of fact, I might give you some good portions of that because I know a lot of you may have missed it. So we'll see what it looks like as we close in on hour number two. But right now, that will be the plan. So speaking of the early signing period, yesterday evening after we got off the air here on the show, I took a few minutes to kind of sit down and watch back some of the things from the Allen Reeves Center there, the Clemson Football Operations Complex. And so I fire up the video. I'm watching Don Munson interview Nick Eason. I watch that interview. I think Mickey Kahn came on next. I can't remember the exact order. Watch some of Mickey Kahn. And then all of a sudden, it was time for Wes Goodwin. I mean, the most obscure and surprising, I think I've called it the most fascinating hire I've ever covered. So Wes Goodwin, unknown to most people that aren't in the football operations complex until December when he gets the defensive coordinating job, steps to the podium. Don Munson introduces him. Wes Goodwin does his same old thing he did last time around where he says, "Hey, Don, it's good to be here. Glad to hang out with you." And I'm looking at him and I'm going, I think that is the exact same outfit Wes Goodwin wore in December on the early signing day show. So, of course, you know me. And again, follow me on Twitter at Clemson Sports to find these photos. I tweet out a picture after I find it that indeed he did wear the same thing. So I took a photo of both yesterday's National Signing Day and December's early signing period. And to a T, from the jacket to the undershirt, the polo, I guess, that Wes Goodwin is wearing, it looks like it was filmed on the same exact day. The only difference is not of Wes Goodwin's doing, but the headset that he was wearing, the microphone, was placed on the left side yesterday or the first day back in December, and then yesterday it was on the right. Other than that, I said, just notice Wes Goodwin wore the exact same outfit on both National Signing Days. I said, just a subtle guy or superstitious? Thoughts? And we got lots of replies, and they are great. We'll get into some of those here in just a few minutes. As a matter of fact, I'll start with those. Coach Geary, he's at Low Country Hoops, chimes in and says, maybe he's just got a closet full of them, or signing day fell on the same wash cycle. I could see that, right? Wes Goodwin seems like a guy that might have his Wednesday outfit, and I believe both of those occurred on a Wednesday. Peaky Risky Biscuit said could be the only thing he owns. Clemson Tiger Truth 2 said, recruiting and film watching, no time to care about fashion. I like it. Michael chimes in and says, glad his mind is on Clemson football versus fashion. Jen says, nothing wrong with some lucky clothes. Chad chimes in, says, geniuses like to simplify by wearing the same thing all the time. Steve says, hey, football ain't a fashion show. I like this guy already. Sage says, maybe he's just a little stitious, but not superstitious. Steve said he's been working this whole time and hadn't had that chance to go home and change. That's classic, Steve. That's a retweetable offense. And finally, M. Hendo said, how many different outfits do you see Bill Belichick wear? It's all about ball, not fashion. So, to my surprise, Wes Goodwin responded. Goodwin said simply to our tweet, he said, rookie mistake, and 3 crying out loud, laughing emojis. Followed that up. That was then followed up by Clemson SID Ross Taylor, who said that to Wes's credit, I can personally testify that is the GOAT Clemson coat. So the greatest of all time in terms of Clemson coats. To which Adam Ergel, who does some design work, said, graphic design work, said, I don't believe you. I'll DM you my address so you can send me one to try. Now, I don't know what happened, and I do wonder. I did wonder this. I didn't ask Wes Goodwin this. I wish I kind of had put it in the tweet to ask him. Did he know immediately? Like, or did it take, like, did he roll into the office and go, oh, man, I think I wore this on the first signing day? Or did that not occur to him until I sent it? And again, I don't care if that's the thing he wears every Wednesday. I did respond back, though, to Wes's tweet about the rookie mistake. I did say, look, I expect to see that every year. I want that to be the tradition. Every time Clemson's got a signing day, I want Wes Goodwin in the gray and white striped polo with the accompanying gray Clemson overcoat or jacket. It was just, because if you go back, listen, I'm telling you, you go find our tweet right now from yesterday. If I didn't know any better, outside of the microphone deal, I would have said to you, they filmed Wes's segment back in December. Even to his hair, it is almost, everything to a T. But I'm going to tell you, this time around, he looked more like an evil genius than before. He looked like an evil genius. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with a defensive evil genius Wes Goodwin. I'm okay with it. Don't bother me. Won't hurt Swanny's feelings. Now, the guy got the job done in the first game. Can he get the job done in the first season coming up this year? Listen, they are stacked on that defensive front. He says you got to risk it for the biscuit. No risk it, no biscuit. Clemson's going to be blitzing. I think Trenton Simpson's a rising star. I think the secondary certainly got some guys that they got some spots to fill. Andrew Booth was elite. Mario Goodrich played phenomenal. They got some guys there, Sheridan Jones, Nate Wiggins. They got some players, I think, that can play. But that will be, that's going to be the one spot. Like, the back end is where you got a question. But that was the same thing in 2018. And you saw Trayvon Mullen and A.J. Terrell become monsters. And a large part of that was because of how good that defensive front was. That might be the same story this year. We'll hit a break. Hour 2 coming up next. Stay with us.
It's time for Clemson Sports Talk with Lawton Swan.
Ready, set. Just call me Swanny.
Tiger style. Tiger style.
It is hour number 2. That's drive time right here on the show that shakes the Southland Clemson Sports Talk. Lawton Swan with you again. Hour number 1. We talked at length about Clemson's 75-69 victory over Florida State. One of the things I was amazed about and continue to be amazed about is how Florida State goes out and gets big man. Dude, they have 4 7-footers on that team. 4. And that's been sort of the norm for them as of late. But Clemson wins. The Tigers will take on Georgia Tech this weekend before a 3-game homestand against Duke, North Carolina, and Notre Dame. 3 big ball games. They'll have to do it, though, without Hunter Tyson. Clemson's leader, you heard earlier in hour 1, Brad Brownell called him, no doubt, the leader of that team. This all before the news came out that he was out for an extended period with this issue. They will have to navigate some tough matchups without a leader who, again, I said earlier, I don't think has performed to the level that I thought he would be playing at as a senior, but he is nonetheless a key piece of the puzzle for this Clemson team because of his versatility. How long he's out, we still don't know, but Clemson moves forward with a victory over the Seminoles. Now, yesterday on the show, we had a little hitch in the giddy-up, as I like to say. And that hitch in the giddy-up brought forth an issue where some of you were unable to hear the final few minutes of our interview or the press conference with Clemson SID Graham Neff. Now, I am not going to replay that entire interview. That would be ridiculousness. And I know Clemson Larry reached out and said, Swanny, I'm not going to listen to the podcast. If I can't hear it live, I'll find it some other way. Larry, I need you on the podcast, bud. But truth be told, what I decided to do today, since Tim Bray texted that he cannot be on the program this afternoon, I was like, well, man, I've got this interview with, or this press conference with Graham Neff where you guys didn't get to hear it all anyway. So we'll reset that for you. Not the whole thing. I'll give you about the back 7-8 minutes of that interview with Graham Neff here on the show. I don't know why I keep saying interview. It was a press conference with Graham Neff yesterday after National Signing Day. So that you hear everything in its entirety, including the updates on Clemson Plus, which based on what Graham Neff talked about and what I read, I don't know exactly how it's still going to work as far as old or archived games, or whether that'll just be clips. Nonetheless, here's Graham Neff from yesterday up in Tiger Town, just following Dabo Swinney's press conference with the media. But Graham Neff, Clemson University athletic director, was asked about his role, and when he was hired, the Board of Trustees had such great things to say about his tenure, and there was no question, right? Like, I mean, I think I even tweeted when Dan Radakovich announced that he was taking the job at Miami, that's a no-brainer. It's Graham Neff. It's a no-brainer. I mean, there's no question in my mind. And so Graham Neff was asked about, who's the next Graham Neff? Like, who is the guy behind you that could eventually become the no-brainer? And here's what he had to say about that.
Great question. Thanks, Gene. Working on it. So we will. I'm excited for our staff. And listen, we have a senior staff of about 13. I think I've been here and been part of the recruitment or the hire, or certainly just a peer colleague for, I think, 10 of the 13. So I get really excited just to continue to join that room and table, albeit maybe in a little bit of a different chair. And so want to continue to grow our staff and continue to retrench a little bit, but then add horsepower to the team, so to speak. So do anticipate to add some staff, various levels, and yeah, there's been some moments where it certainly felt like, not that I'm doing two jobs, because again, we've certainly had some delegation, but there is an empty dark office with my old files in it that I do want to make sure that we're retooling in that regard. But given the staff we have, want to move expeditiously but not urgent, and so have some time here over the spring as we get into it and sit with staff and see what fits best internally and externally.
Graham Neff was also asked about the baseball program again a year ago, finishing under 500 and out of postseason play. Certainly a hot button issue for the Tiger faithful. Here's what Neff had to say about Monty Lee.
Obviously, we love baseball here. I grew up in Atlanta. In the 90s, baseball was my first love. Pro baseball, Atlanta Braves, of course. But I love baseball personally. It's in my bones, and the success for baseball here at Clemson is really important. I know Monty had some time with a lot of you all earlier in the week. Monty and I talk a lot. We live very closely to each other, and so just the ongoing dialogue that we've always had, just from the baseball program, and the roster and scholarships. We talk a lot about scholarships right here and how we can invest and provide those resources. So, it doesn't feel, quite honestly, like a big change of expectation setting, or, hey, I need to really roll my sleeves up with baseball. Like Monty and I's relationship, I was certainly with Dan and Kyle Young as we recruited and hired Monty. But I know he's excited, obviously, with the guys and with a lot of the returners and their accolades and Caden and Will, if he gets healthy. So excited for them to get going. So the dialogue that's existed with Monty, he and I will continue. And certainly as we get into wanting to have a really good year, it'll be important.
So again, that of course is Graham Neff talking about Monty Lee. He was also asked about Brad Brownell. We'll get to that shortly. But here's a little bit of the explanation behind that Clemson Plus package that we talked about earlier as well.
So February, absolutely. Again, we'll have a lot more pub coming out with it. February 15th is the launch date, and that's strategic because that's the first 50% deadline for IPTAY donations. And again, how we're tying in the business model of Clemson Plus, we're not aware of anybody else in the country collegiately that's doing it this way. And there's been a couple that have been announced, so we're not maybe the first mover, but we're a very, very early mover in this tech, this platform. But we do know there's a lot of other schools that may be working on it as well. And a lot of them are, all of them that we're aware of are all subscription-based, $4.99 a month, $5.99 a month, and now you have an immediate revenue stream with it. The business model for us is more of the long ball. So IPTAY membership, all current IPTAY members, 29,000 of them, including Collegiate Club and Block C, will have on February 15th access to Clemson Plus. So it's an added benefit to your current membership, let alone obviously the compelling nature for us to incent and grow membership. And so there is not the transactional immediate revenue stream with it. We're playing the long ball from a IPTAY membership lifetime of giving type concept. Let alone we'll be able to tastefully advertise within it with our in-house multimedia sales team and have a couple revenue streams with it, but really it's just a product to be able to tell our story better. There's going to be great vault and archival games that we probably all put on. I know we do on Thanksgiving afternoon or things like that to watch the Ohio State Orange Bowl game in 13, those type of things. So there'll be great content that we have. Certainly we've continued to staff up and add more content to it, let alone just the other content or assets with it, with archival games, podcasts, etc.
The final question to Graham Neff came about Brad Brownell, who, people have, I've probably fired him 3 times. I probably rehired him twice. It is a basketball program that is incredibly frustrating at times, but here's what the new athletic director at Clemson, Graham Neff, said about his relationship with Brad Brownell and that basketball program.
And I think you all may know certainly how close Brad and I work together professionally and how we handle our staffing assignments, and we have sports supervisions. And so, basketball and football were really the two that I worked most closely with compared to all of our sports. And so I'm similar to the Monty conversation with baseball. I feel very in the weeds with Brad as a teammate and as our head coach, and certainly with the opportunities and successes of our basketball team. So, listen, we just flipped into February. Obviously, got a big game tonight. I know Brad is juiced and feels healthy coming off a little bit of the bye weekend, and I just get really excited for how he goes about it. Of course, and we all know how he leads the men in the locker room, culture, how he's engaged former players. Obviously, academics and compliance, particularly in men's basketball, right, is something that is a non-negotiable at Clemson as far as play by the rules, do it the right way. And when you have a head coach like Brad in a sport like college basketball, and what that means is just a huge comfort and a huge value, quite frankly. So all of those things off the field, Brad is off the court, Brad is spades, and get excited about where he has the roster and what's left for the season.
So that was, again, Graham Neff yesterday, and I wanted to replay that. Hopefully that got the audio that you guys missed. I think it would have been the back 4 minutes or so maybe that you missed out on yesterday. So I hope that was done well. 803-450-0086. If it wasn't, let me know. Larry, I'm talking to you. You can let me know if I didn't get what you needed. And if not, I am happy to direct you again to the podcast. Larry, I want another podcast listener. Come on. Larry, if you're streaming, let me tell you this. If you are streaming on your Amazon Echo or Google Home device, you typically can just say, play the name of this show, Clemson Sports Talk, and it'll give you the podcast. Now, I don't know about fast forwarding on those devices, but you could do that. Makes it easy for everybody. Of course, earlier in the week, or I guess technically, Friday, last week, we got a chance to hear from Monty Lee. And today, the Atlantic Coast Conference announced their preseason rankings in terms of the Atlantic and Coastal Division. The Florida State Seminoles were selected by the ACC in the preseason poll based off of the league's 14 head coaches' opinion as the favorite. The coaches voted Georgia Tech as the favorite to win the Coastal Division. Clemson, if you're wondering, picked to finish 5th in the Atlantic Division behind Florida State, NC State, Notre Dame, and Louisville. The Tigers are only ahead of Wake Forest and Boston College in the Atlantic Division rankings. Over in the Coastal, Georgia Tech, as I mentioned, on top. The Yellow Jackets in the Coastal Division are followed up by Virginia, Miami, Duke, and then the bottom 3 teams in the Coastal, as voted on by the coaches, North Carolina, Virginia Tech, and Pitt. So not an ideal starting spot where Clemson fans would want them to be, bottom half of the Atlantic Division. And look, last season, there is no doubt it was a disappointment. Everything will culminate this year at Truist Field in Charlotte in May 24th through the 29th for the Atlantic Coast Conference Baseball Championship. How the season plays out for Clemson at this point is probably anybody's guess, just given the fact that it really has been an up and down tenure for Monty Lee. And certainly after a season like they had a year ago, I mean, this campaign really feels like one where you've got to have a successful season, because unlike basketball, where maybe people are wavering and getting tired of it, people turn to the point of could care less. In baseball, if people waver and get tired of it as a coach, but they want you gone. And it'll quickly become a majority of people that would want Monty Lee gone. And I really like Monty Lee, but coaching baseball at Clemson has a different level of expectations than most sports in Tiger Town. And that's just the nature of the beast. And he knows it. And this year he said he's trying to give more of that leadership over to the players, allow those guys to have a leadership council that was voted on, allow those guys to try to self-motivate. And he said, look, if we've got to meet to motivate these guys, or we got to meet with these guys, then the program is not doing what it needs to do. And he really feels like a player-led team is exactly what is best for this Clemson baseball club. 803-450-0086, 803-450-0086, text line, phone line. You can hit us up anytime. We had a couple of texts come in over the past few days that I did not get a chance to get to, so I'll try to do that. We took a look at Clemson's schedule a few days ago, and again, the Atlantic Coast Conference, amazingly, really got the schedule released ahead of the kickoff of the first matchups in September. That's how long it takes them. Clemson's schedule, again, they'll open with Georgia Tech on the road in Atlanta. Then they'll face Furman at home on September the 10th, just 5 days later. The following week, they'll host Louisiana Tech on September the 17th. The 24th of September, they go to Wake Forest. Back on the 1st of October at home against NC State. On the 8th, on the road at Boston College. On the 15th of October, on the road at Florida State. Back home a week later against Syracuse on the 22nd of October. October the 29th. The Tigers have off. On November the 5th, they'll go to Notre Dame. And then a 3-game homestand, November the 12th against Louisville, November the 19th against Miami, and November the 26th against South Carolina. Clemson will close the season with 4 out of their final 5 games in Death Valley. Nick from Georgia says Notre Dame on the road will be our toughest game. Every other game we should be able to win. One thing, Nick, that people may not realize, and this is important to note, Clemson plays a lot of upperclassmen at quarterback this coming season. A lot, including Spencer Rattler at South Carolina, Malik Cunningham at Louisville. I mean, you go on and on and on through this roster, this schedule, and you're going to find some seasoned veteran quarterbacks. And if by chance DJ doesn't win the day as the quarterback for Clemson, you could be looking at a scenario where Clemson, if you assume that DJ doesn't win the starting job and it falls to Cade Klubnik, then you would be talking about a freshman going up against some truly elite veterans across. Well, not hold on. Let me rephrase that. I don't want to call these guys elite, but going up against some incredibly talented veterans in the ACC. John in Archdale gives us his thoughts on the schedule. He says, Swanny, no issue with this year's schedule, although it will be tough to play 8 games before the open date, but it works for us if we make the playoffs. He also says, I'm more interested in future schedules, 8 or 9 conference games, no divisions. When we play at Miami, UVA, and Virginia Tech, schools that I have not seen Clemson play in person. Or when do we? I guess he's saying play at Miami, UVA, and Virginia Tech. That is the other hard part of scheduling, at least from the fans' perspective. Just trying to figure out who you're going to play next year. I mean, you honestly, it's so frustrating because in my life and in my experiences in life, I have often used a spreadsheet to generate some type of information needed, to include the ability to, say, have a fair and balanced rotation of seating for a 16-passenger van, or matter of fact, 3 16-passenger vans and a bus over a 23-day period to make sure that every person was on the bus the same, or on a van the same amount of days as everybody else, and you were on the van with alternate people, those days, so that it worked out so that everybody rode the vans equally, everybody was on the bus equally, and the times that you were on the van, you weren't on the van with the same people. Like, to come up with something like that is a lot more difficult, in my opinion, than coming up with the Atlantic Coast Conference schedule. And that's why it's so frustrating to me that it takes so long for this league to get that schedule out. It absolutely blows my mind. But we did get it, and now we got a chance to discuss it. So I guess, as they say, that's water under the bridge. But when it comes down to Clemson's schedule, again, in 2022, I think it's more about Clemson than everybody else. How the Tigers play. And if they play their best, they'll win a lot of games. Stay with us. Clemson Sports Talk on a Thursday. So I didn't even tease this. I don't really know how to handle it at this point. But the Washington football team, and boy, we could talk about the Brian Flores situation as well in the NFL, which does not sound promising or good for the league. But the Washington football team, the artist formerly known as the Washington Redskins, have their new mascot. Is that what you call it? Their new name, their nickname. And I could think of about a zillion, I think, better than what we ended up with. The Washington Commanders. Now, I know that the Washington Generals are taken. That's the team that plays the Harlem Globetrotters. So I don't think that one would have been available. But the Commanders, I don't know. I don't love it. And I'm not a Washington fan. If you are a Washington fan, I'd love to hear what you think about it. I mean, I'll be honest, I was even more in favor of something as corny as the DCs. I would have been okay with the Washington DCs. I mean, if we can have the 76ers and the 49ers, why can't you have the DCs? To me, that just makes sense. And I get it, the commander-in-chief, the commander of the military, the commanders. And again, generals was gone. That would have made the most sense, right? Like the Washington Generals, That makes perfect sense. And, the other thing, too, about this is they had put out a list of the 8 potential names that they were down to, of which they were the Armada, the Brigade, the Commanders, the Defenders, the Presidents, the Red Hogs, of course, play on that offensive line back in the day, the Red Wolves, or just keeping it with the Washington football team. But there were so many out there, in my opinion, that were better. The Red Tails, using the airplanes. Even the Monuments, to me, would have been a better nickname for Washington. And maybe that one wasn't available. But I'm not sure I'm loving the matchup between the Cowboys and the Commanders here. The Washington Commanders. I mean, look, it's better than the Washington football team. I gotta be honest on that one. But the Commanders, it just feels disappointing. And I think part of it that makes it underwhelming is the fact that as a franchise, the Redskins name was just so synonymous with their rivalry against the Cowboys. And also, I don't know if they could have gotten around it by choosing a potato as a mascot and going with the Redskins, like the Redskin potatoes. I mean, I don't know if that would have been offensive to people. Syracuse has an orange. Teams have changed their names, no doubt, but I think if you were legitimately going to say, "Hey, look, we'll do this potato theme and we'll roll with it," would that have been taken away from you? I mean, if you wanted to be the Yellow Onions or the Vidalias, who cares? But the Washington Commanders, I'm sticking to my guns, man. I think that the DCs was where it was at. The Washington DCs. And I get it. Look, those teams in Washington, the Senators have been a team in the past. The Nationals are obviously the baseball team right now. And the Capitals is the hockey team. So you are sort of limited in your selection unless you double up. And I just don't see teams doing that at this point because of how valuable the name of your franchise is. But the Washington Monuments, figuring out a way to buy the Washington Generals. You think at this point with COVID-19, the Harlem Globetrotters and the Washington Generals couldn't have used a little extra coin in the bank? You think anybody cares if that team was called the Commanders? You know what I mean? Like, nobody would have cared at all if the Washington Generals, the old basketball team that has been beaten up by the Harlem Globetrotters for eons, nobody would care if they changed their name. You could be anything. Nobody cares. You're just putting on a show. But instead, we've got the Washington Commanders, which will certainly be the Washington Commandos at some point. The commanding lead will be a joke. I don't know, guys. Your boy Swanny's not feeling it. I think the Monuments or the DCs would have been so much better. The Monuments. The Washington Monuments. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe I'm going to poo-poo that one myself. The Washington DCs, yes, I am for it. Sign me up. That is the one. That is a missed opportunity. The Washington DCs. Are you a DC fan? Yeah, I'm a DC fan. Let's go, DC. I mean, I'm all over it here, right? In the stadium. DC. DC. It makes perfect sense. Too much sense, actually. Stay with us. It is the show that shakes the Southland, Clemson Sports Talk. The Tigers last night on the hardwood, knocking off the Florida State Seminoles by 6. We heard from Brad Brownell, Naz Bohannon, and PJ Hall a little bit earlier. Still working with former Clemson Tiger running back Darian Rencher about getting him set up for an interview. I do have to say, however, what Darian has done with his podcast, man, is really awesome. Sat down with Dabo Swanny, sat down with Trevor Lawrence, and you know, the connections that he's got to those individuals is really, really cool. So you're getting some great content on that front. So I can't wait to catch up with him to find out a little bit more about his podcast, his future, and everything else. Again, 803-450-0086. If you want to comment on our take on the Washington Commanders, let me know. The more I say it, the less I hate it, but even still, the DCs is where it's at. Over in the NBA, the Kobe Bryant Trophy will be awarded to the All-Star Game's most valuable player moving forward, and that award was unveiled today along with several other new awards. But again, the NBA celebrating their 75th anniversary this season, but a couple of years ago, obviously, we lost one of the greats to play the game during my lifetime in Kobe Bryant in a tragic helicopter accident, and now the NBA will honor him by putting together or now by creating this Kobe Bryant award that will be given out to the All-Star Game's MVP. 803-450-0086, 803-450-0086. So that's just one of the other items I had on the docket today. And, you know, I think that people have talked about reimagining what the NBA logo might look like if you took Jerry West off of it and went with Michael Jordan, or you went with some other player. Kobe Bryant's name was mentioned at one point. I think this is the perfect way to honor Kobe Bryant, simply because I don't know, even though he had such an incredible impact on the league, I don't know if it's necessary to make such a huge change in terms of your league's logo, simply because one of the great players passed away in his prime, or not necessarily his playing prime, but in the prime of his life. And I think sometimes we can, as human beings, make decisions in haste, if that's the right word. You know, we do it too quickly. And so good to see, I think, the fact that these guys, whomever makes the decision makers, the power brokers of the NBA, at this point at least pump the brakes a little bit and made a good call by awarding, I think, a trophy that Kobe Bryant would certainly be proud of to be a part of, is the MVP of the All-Star Game as the Kobe Bryant Award. I mean, if you can't be the Bill Russell Award, no matter how great you are, for the MVP of the championship, but the Kobe Bryant Award for the MVP of the All-Star Game is really cool. So I think everybody out there who watched Kobe play, whether you liked him or didn't like him, if you are a fan of the NBA, you had to respect how he played. Like, that's one of the reasons that the NBA, for a lot of you, has lost its luster. It doesn't feel like the games are played with the same level of energy during the regular season as is needed to keep a crowd entertained. I think players tend to play hard for about the first 5 minutes of a game. Then they take a break for about an hour and a half. And then they play hard for like the final 10 minutes of a game. And I think that the 82-game schedule I think all of that has an effect on it. And I think leagues would be advised to minimize the number of games played, baseball included, when you're playing such huge schedules. I mean, I think the NBA with a little shorter season, even some shorter games, would enhance the viewability. I think that fans in a generation where people are watching TikTok videos that last like 12 seconds, even shows like SportsCenter have been supplanted by the telephone because my son sees every highlight, but he doesn't have to spend an hour watching SportsCenter to do it. I think the key is shorten the game just a couple of minutes, a couple of minutes a quarter in the NBA. That would trim about 8 minutes of action out of the game, which ups the action to lull ratio, if that's a thing. Plus, I think it would increase how quickly you get to the final 8 or 10 minutes of a ball game when the action is really typically good. There's nothing worse than a team coming out and getting off to a hot start, jumping on somebody and getting up like 26 to 10. And then you got three more quarters of just baloney to deal with. Less sometimes is more. And in an era where players are overpaid, yeah, I know they get what they're worth. If that's what you want to believe, that's fine. It's the market value. I believe they're overpaid in all of these sports for what they do. But because of that, they don't have the same amount of drive to be successful, because they don't have to pay for another meal in their life with the money they made today. For the most part, a lot of those guys. Back in the old days, you were fighting tooth and nail not to go have to work at a factory if your NBA career ended. It's not the case now. Now you make so much money, you don't have to do anything again. And so much of it's guaranteed. So, I think you take the edge away from the players. And if they want to mail it in, they mail it in. Shorten the games, minimizes the time you can mail it in, shorten the season, makes each game more important, and it enhance the brand for fans, enhance the value for fans to tune in and watch. Not everybody plays hard every possession like a Kobe Bryant did for so many years. And that's a problem for the NBA. Final segment coming up next.
What have you done for me lately? It's a fair question. Just don't lose sight of the bigger picture. Don't forget history. Lucky for us at Clemson, the answers to the questions, what have you done for me lately, and what have you done always, are the same. We win.
Final segment on a Thursday. Can't wait for the weekend, to be honest with you. Just looking forward to being able to relax a little bit. Last weekend, we were up at like 6 o'clock on Saturday to go to a soccer tournament, and I still have not recovered. I joked, I don't know if I said this on the air, but I joked with my family and friends. My alarm clock was mad that we had to wake up on a Saturday. It was like, no, Swanny. I went in to my phone and had to set the alarm, and it was off for Saturday, and my phone was like, don't wake me up early. Clemson Larry chimes into the program. He says, Swanny, thank you for playing the cut out section from yesterday's show. He said, I've listened to you live for years. I'm not a podcast person. No time to do that, so thanks again. And said that I did get the audio that was deleted. I got to figure out how to get Larry on the podcast. That's what I got. That's what I'm going to work on. I'm going to do a whole show dedicated to Clemson Larry, hot takes from Clemson Larry, and I'm just going to put on the podcast version, and I'm going to talk it up on the air and try to entice Larry into tuning in. Oh, man. Love Clemson Larry, though. He's a great guy. He's been a part of the show for many, many years. Whether he listens in White Bear Lake, Minnesota, or the big city of Greer, South Carolina, no matter what, Larry, man, you've always been here, buddy. Always appreciate you. The Clemson Larry edition at some point. And it's going to be not on the radio, just a podcast version. And I'm going to talk it up a lot. And then Larry will have to write in and say, okay, Swanny, I listen to one podcast, but that does not make me a podcast listener. Fair point. Fair point. All right, let's see. What else we got going on in the world of sports today? I know I had a couple of text messages come through earlier. I guess we did get to all of those, didn't we? Yeah, I think we did. But honestly, that makes me feel happy because I was a little bit concerned earlier that I wouldn't have a chance to squeeze those in. Final note here on the show today, 5-star prospect Labius Overton. No relation to Double O, Overton's orange. Labius Overton, the top-ranked football recruit in the 2023 recruiting cycle, will be reclassifying and joining the 2022 recruiting class. Now, the plan for Overton, because the early signing period and National Signing Day and everything was yesterday, the plan for him is he is going to take his 5 visits and try to make his decision before April or in April, I think, if I remember correctly. Now, he is a 4.0 student. He's been taking AP classes, according to his father. Overton, a young man out of Milton, Georgia, Milton High School, whose father's name is Milton. Get that. The athletic director, Milton Overton from Kennesaw State's his dad. Labius has put out a top 5 of Georgia, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Oregon, and Texas A&M. His son's going to take 5 visits over the next few months, and then they anticipate him making his decision in April. Now, I just talked earlier about Texas A&M, and they are obviously in this list. But I think if I'm a team, I am wondering whether or not this could turn out to be another situation like we saw with Quinn Ewers out of Texas, who went to Ohio State, cashed in what some people believe to be a 7-figure deal, only to check out from Ohio State by the time the season was over, as Ewers returned back to his home state to play for the Texas Longhorns. I don't know that this is what we want, and I don't think that it's a great idea for these kids to reclassify, especially if the only reason they're doing it is to benefit from NIL. And I'm not saying that's why Overton is doing it, but I mean, because obviously his family's in a good situation based on, you don't know anybody's finances, but given their jobs, it seems like they wouldn't need money. But I just don't know if it's a wise choice for guys to, try to advance this so quickly. Like, enjoy your high school. Enjoy your senior year. I don't know. Final thing. Clemson Tiger staffer J.P. Losman, who we actually talked about Losman here on the program a couple of weeks ago. Former player in the NFL, has been a part of this Clemson team as an offensive analyst. According to ESPN's Pete Thamel, J.P. Losman will be joining Brent Venable's staff at Oklahoma. He was a first-round draft pick out of Tulane and the 22nd pick to the Bills. He has been a part of Clemson's program since 2017. So Brent Venables has brought over Ted Roof, Todd Bates, Miguel Chavis, and then also PJ Losman, Bad Turnip Seed, and Xavier Brewer. So a lot of Tigers out there in Norman, Oklahoma. We got to get out of here. Till tomorrow. As always, y'all take care now. And go Tigers.